My name is Captain Alyssa Romero, 27 years old, United States Army. In a wood-paneled law office, my parents stormed in after 16 years, calling me a girl who just plays soldier. Their smug voices echoed, perfume choking the air, until the lawyer read one code, $13,500. That's when everything changed. What would you do if family tried to erase your service? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe for more soldier revenge. I'm Captain Alyssa Romero, 27 years old, a soldier in the United States Army. Discipline has been my armor since I was 10 years old, the day my parents left me behind. That discipline was all I had left when I sat in a stuffy Georgetown law office, waiting for my uncle's will to be read. The room smelled of lemon polish and old leather. Sunlight cut across the heavy mahogany desk in sharp bars. I sat arrow straight in my service uniform, brass polished, every crease exact, because it was the only part of me I could control. On the other side of the desk sat Caleb Whitaker, my Uncle Ben's attorney and oldest friend. His steady voice read out the numbers. Assets, shares, trusts, figures so large they barely registered. To me, it was just a mission brief. Then the door exploded open. Not turned, not pushed. Slammed. My instincts flared before my mind caught up. Two figures filled the frame, a man and a woman I hadn't seen in 16 years. My biological parents. Nan, my mother by blood, if not by loyalty, swept her gaze over me as if I were a piece of furniture. Then she locked on Caleb and fired the first shot. "What a waste," she said, her tone like ice. "To leave an estate like this to a girl who just plays soldier." Grant, my father, nodded with smug agreement. "She'll have her pension. This is for real family." The words were guided munitions, meant to destroy not just my claim, but my very identity. I didn't flinch. My breathing stayed calm, posture unmoved, but inside I logged every insult, every violation of protocol. My hands remained folded, but my body was on full alert. Caleb's jaw tightened. "This is a private reading," he said firmly. "You're not entitled to interrupt." They ignored him. That was their way. Always storming in, never knocking, never respecting procedure. The air shifted again as the door opened softly this time. Maria Sanchez entered, balancing a tray of coffee with quiet dignity. A Gold Star widow, my godmother, the only other constant beside Uncle Ben. She set the tray down, then placed her hand briefly on my shoulder. No words. Just an anchor, a reminder I wasn't alone. Grant scoffed, sneering, "And who's this? The help?" Maria met his eyes without a flicker of fear. "I've been family for 16 years," she said evenly. Something in me steadied at her words. The uniform on my shoulders felt less like armor, more like a mantle of command. When I spoke, my voice wasn't the voice of a niece being insulted. It was the voice of a captain. "She is family," I said, my tone sharp and absolute. "You two are strangers." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the tick of the brass clock on the shelf. In that stillness, one truth crystallized. The ambush had begun. And this was only the opening volley. The drive from Georgetown to Uncle Ben's house near Fort Belvoir was a blur. My hands knew the turns, but my mind replayed the ambush over and over. 16 years of silence broken not with remorse, not with recognition, but with greed. Their words echoed in the cab of my car like ricochets. Plays soldier. Real family. The oak canopy along the George Washington Parkway blurred into green shadows. For me, this road was a timeline, each marker carrying a scar. At 10 years old, I had woken up one Saturday morning to find a silent house. No shouting over money, no slam doors. Just quiet. On the kitchen counter, one piece of torn legal paper in my mother's rushed handwriting. "Uncle Ben will take care of you." 7 words. No goodbye. No I love you. Just an order transferring custody like freight. Uncle Ben had taken me in without hesitation, but the void they left never healed. Over the years, I built what I call my box of evidence. a shoebox buried in the back of my closet. Inside, a ticket stub from my 8th grade play, the empty seat they left beside Uncle Ben. A late birthday card with nothing but a $20 bill and no signature. A photo tagged on social media the night of my high school graduation. Grant and Nyan at a casino bar, plastic cups in hand, while I stood at the podium looking into 2 empty chairs. Each item was a wound. Together, they were a case file. That box came back to life in Ben's study 3 days after the ambush. The study smelled of pipe tobacco and old paper, a fortress of memory. That's where my parents revealed their trump card. With a deliberate flick of manicured nails, Nan pulled a yellowed document from her briefcase. A parental rights relinquishment filed 16 years ago. The figure was circled in red ink. $1,300. Grant leaned forward, voice smooth as if he were negotiating a contract. We were drowning in debt. Ben stepped in. It was a good deal for everyone. I scanned the page, my training and documentation kicking in. County court header, case number, judge's initials, certified stamp, chain of custody intact. I took photos, time-stamped them, forwarded copies to Caleb. Every action was procedure. But the truth hit like artillery. $13,500. That was the price tag on my childhood, the value they had assigned to me. Maria was beside me. Her voice was low but steady. Desperation doesn't make a child negotiable. I turned back to them, my voice flat, stripped of emotion. You sold me. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Grant shifted tactics, his face tilting into false indignation. We gave you stability. Ben could provide what we couldn't. What they couldn't, or what they wouldn't. The difference didn't matter. The fact was now documented. They had signed me away like an old debt. As I set the paper back on the desk, my phone buzzed. An email notification slid across the screen. The sender, Martin Keene, Esk, subject line, Estate of Benjamin Thomas. It wasn't just greed, it was a campaign, a coordinated offensive. The ambush in Georgetown was only the opening salvo. Now, the battlefield was shifting to where I knew it would end. Court. The next morning, before the city was awake, I found myself back in Caleb Whitaker's office. The blinds were half drawn, the only light coming from a desk lamp and the glow of his laptop screen. A carafe of black coffee steamed between us. The smell of it mixed with the faint musk of leather-bound law books and printer toner. The place didn't feel like a law office anymore. It felt like a command post. On the table sat a heavy gray lockbox, the kind of utilitarian steel container you'd expect to see bolted into a supply depot, not a lawyer's desk. Caleb placed his hand on it with care. Your uncle left explicit instructions, he said. This is only to be opened if your parents contest the will. They've already contested it, I answered. My voice was steady, though the muscles in my jaw clenched. Open it. The key turned with a soft metallic click. When the lid lifted, the contents weren't money or jewels. They were documents, organized with the precision of a man who knew battles are won long before the first shot. On top were photocopies of personal checks, every payment Ben had made to Grant and Nan over 2 decades. Each annotated in his neat handwriting, car repairs, hospital bill, tuition advance. Pages and pages of dependency spelled out in black ink. Below that, a spiral-bound report. A private investigator's dossier, complete with photographs and time-stamped receipts. Casino floors in Atlantic City, neon lights flashing behind my parents as they laughed over drinks. Each date matched perfectly with phone calls where they had begged Ben for help. They hadn't been desperate. They had been gambling. And then Caleb slid a small thumb drive into his laptop. A file opened, audio crackled, and my father's voice filled the room. If you don't give me more money, Ben, I swear I'll tell the kid how you paid to get rid of us. I'll wreck that hero image she has of you. I'll ruin everything. The words were ugly, pitiful, but the evidence was pure gold. I leaned back in my chair, the fury in my chest cooling into something sharper. In the Army, we're taught that anger is a liability. Information is ammunition. What Ben had left me wasn't just an inheritance. He had left me a stockpile. But Caleb wasn't smiling. He pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, eyes narrowing. We have to assume they'll hire counsel. And not just anyone. They'll go to Martin Keene. I'd seen the name in my inbox. What's his profile? Litigator. Ruthless. Doesn't win on merit, wins on attrition. He floods the court with motions, drowns the other side in costs, leaks to the press, attacks reputations until people break. I absorbed the assessment the way I would a threat briefing. Then we prepare for a siege. Caleb hesitated, then pointed to one clause in Ben's will. There's something else. If for any reason you can't or won't serve as executor, the responsibility passes to Maria Sanchez. The implication landed like a warning shot. I pictured Maria, steady, warm, the woman who made tortillas with me when I was a child, being dragged through court by a man like Keene. My protective instinct snapped into place. They'll go after her, I said flatly. They'll paint her as manipulative, accuse her of influencing Ben. She's the soft target. Exactly, Caleb said quietly. I looked at him, my decision immediate. Then we hardened the flank. Priority 1, build a legal firewall around Maria. Sworn declarations, community testimony, character references. We establish her reputation before they can touch it. Caleb nodded, already scribbling notes. The war had moved to paper and procedure. I wasn't just a niece defending her inheritance. I was a captain preparing a counteroffensive. Uncle Ben hadn't left me to fight alone. He'd left me a battle plan. 2 days later, I chose the ground for our next engagement. In the army, you never let the enemy dictate the terrain. If they're going to fight you, you make them fight where you're strongest. For me, that wasn't a courtroom. Not yet. It was the headquarters of Aegis Tactical Solutions, the company my uncle and I had built from sweat, solder, and long nights in a garage. The executive conference room sat like a glass box above the manufacturing floor. From the head of the table, you could see engineers in lab coats moving with quiet precision, assembling prototypes that would one day keep soldiers alive in combat. The hum of machinery rose like a steady heartbeat beneath the silence. It was the perfect backdrop. This wasn't just inheritance. This was legacy. At precisely 0900 hours, the door opened. First came Martin Keene, shorter than I expected, but carrying the smug confidence of a man who'd rarely lost a case. Behind him trailed Grant and Nan, overdressed for a funeral, out of place among steel, glass, and innovation. My security team let them pass, then closed the door. I didn't offer them chairs. I wanted them standing, vulnerable, looking up at me where I stood at the head of the table. My posture was calm, my voice even, but every detail was deliberate. This is an intelligence briefing, I said. I trust you'll find the information illuminating. I clicked a remote. The wall monitor flickered to life. Exhibit A. The Parental Rights Termination Order, Maryland Court, 16 years old. The number $13,500 circled in red. As you can see, all parental rights were legally and permanently severed, I said. Nain's lips pressed tight, her shoulders stiffening. Click. Exhibit B. A restraining order issued to my uncle against them in 2021, following harassing calls. The case number and court seal glowed on the screen. Grant shifted uneasily, eyes darting toward Keene, but Keene's jaw was locked. Click. Exhibit C. The audio recording. My father's voice filled the glass box, ugly and desperate. If you don't give me more money, Ben, I'll tell the kid how you paid to get rid of us. I'll ruin everything. When the playback ended, the silence was absolute. The engineers on the floor below kept working, unaware. But in that room, time had frozen. I folded my hands lightly on the back of the chairman's chair. Original documents are preserved. Digital copies are escrowed. Any attempt at defamation or destruction will be met with motions for sanctions. Do we understand each other? For the first time, Keene's smile cracked. He adjusted his tie, speaking with forced calm. "We'll see you in court." "Good," I said, tone as level as a rifle barrel. "On the record, not in gossip blogs." I gave a small nod to security. "This way, gentlemen." As they filed out, I caught the flicker of fury in Keen's eyes. He had walked into my fortress and been shown his client's case was already crumbling. But I knew what was coming. Men like him didn't retreat. They regrouped, escalated, and struck harder. The war had shifted from inheritance to reputation. And my enemy's next move would not be subtle. The first volley came less than 24 hours after that briefing. A knock at my door, sharp and official. A process server handed me a manila envelope the thickness of a field manual. Inside was Martin Keen's petition, his opening bombardment. It wasn't just a claim to the estate. It was an emergency motion to freeze all of Aegis Tactical's assets effective immediately. Every account, every line of credit, every contract. The justification was venomous. According to Keen, I was a mentally unstable combat veteran, unfit to manage a sensitive defense company. He cited PTSD, paranoia, emotional rigidity. He was trying to turn my discipline, my military bearing, into evidence of instability. It was the same tactic insurgents used in the field. Take your greatest strength and twist it until it becomes a weapon against you. Within hours, the smear campaign opened a second front. A gossip blog in D.C. ran with a headline designed to wound PTSD-stricken Army captain battles parents in $18 million estate dispute. The article was a cocktail of half-truths and outright lies. Anonymous sources claimed my parents were heartbroken and terrified of me. Others questioned my ability to lead a defense company while carrying the emotional scars of combat. They even implied Uncle Ben had been manipulated in his final years. By nightfall, my phone was a live wire. Our CFO called, his voice tight. "Shareholders are spooked. The Pentagon liaison wants answers about the article." Keen had found his rhythm. Legal paralysis paired with reputational sabotage. Caleb convened an emergency meeting in his office. Papers covered the conference table like battle maps. "It's classic scorched earth," he muttered, pacing. "He's not trying to win on merit. He's trying to exhaust us. Financially, psychologically, legally." Maria sat quietly, her hands wrapped around a mug of untouched coffee. Her silence was louder than Caleb's anger. She understood the danger better than either of us. This wasn't just a fight over money. Keen was trying to make me radioactive, untouchable in business, untrustworthy as a soldier. Then the third strike landed. Caleb's paralegal rushed in, face white. The judge granted Keen's motion to expedite. "The hearing isn't Friday anymore." He swallowed. "It's tomorrow morning, 0800. The air was sucked out of the room. 48 hours had been compressed into 12. Keen wasn't just hitting hard. He was hitting fast, forcing us to defend before we could organize. It was a legal blitzkrieg. Caleb slammed his palm against the table. "He's trying to break us before we even get to trial." I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes for a moment, and let the noise fade. I had felt this before, on patrol in Kandahar when everything went wrong at once. Incoming fire, comms down, a vehicle disabled. Panic is the enemy's most effective weapon. When I opened my eyes, my voice was calm. Then we do what soldiers do when the enemy charges with overwhelming force. Caleb and Maria looked at me, waiting. We don't panic. We set the ambush. The courtroom was cold, the kind of cold that came not from temperature but from polished stone and the weight of judgment. The walls smelled faintly of wax and dust. The seal of the District of Columbia Superior Court loomed above the bench, stark and immovable. I wore my Army Class A uniform. Not as theater, not for pity, but because it was the truth of who I was. It was the same uniform they had mocked, the same uniform they had tried to reduce to a girl who just plays soldier. I sat arrow straight at the respondents' table, Maria and Caleb beside me. Across the aisle, Grant and Nayan sat with their counsel, Martin Keene. When the judge entered, the room snapped to silence. Judge Eleanor Vance, 60, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. Her reputation was clear. She didn't tolerate theatrics. Keene rose anyway, his voice oiled and confident. "Your Honor," he began, "this is not about greed. This is about concern. Two parents left behind by a daughter whose military service, while commendable, has tragically left her unstable." He spun his narrative like a practiced actor. PTSD, paranoia, volatility. He gestured toward me as though I were an exhibit myself. He even dared to suggest that my uncle's judgment had been clouded when he made his will. His words dripped with false empathy, but I recognized them for what they were. An artillery barrage, hoping sheer volume would break through. I didn't move, didn't blink. In the Army, silence under fire is its own weapon. When Keene sat down, Caleb rose. He didn't pace. He didn't raise his voice. He simply spoke with the calm of a man who trusted the strength of his evidence. "Your Honor, we will not speculate on psychology. We will present facts." He began with Exhibit A, the certified parental rights relinquishment filed 16 years ago. A court order permanently severing their standing as parents, signed and stamped, the number $13,500 circled in red. "They sold their rights," Caleb said flatly. Exhibit B, a timeline of payments, tens of thousands of dollars in checks from Ben to them over the years, each documented, annotated. Dependency, not support. Exhibit C, a 2021 restraining order against them, signed by a judge, establishing a pattern of harassment. Keene shifted in his seat. His client sat pale and shrinking. Finally, Caleb asked permission to play Exhibit D. Keene shot to his feet. Objection, hearsay, lack of foundation. Judge Vance didn't even glance at him. Overruled. Proceed. The courtroom went still as my father's voice poured from the speakers. "If you don't give me more money, Ben, I'll tell the kid how you paid to get rid of us. I'll ruin everything." When the recording ended, there was nothing. No cough, no shuffle, no whisper. Just the sound of a case collapsing under its own weight. Grant buried his face in his hands. Nain stared at the floor. Even Keene's shoulders sagged. Judge Vance removed her glasses and looked directly at them. Her voice was calm but edged with steel. "The emergency motion to freeze assets is denied, with prejudice. The no contest clause is enforced. You have forfeited any claim to this estate." She paused, her gaze sharpening. "Furthermore, based on the evidence of harassment and attempted blackmail, this court issues a permanent protective order. You are not to approach Captain Romero, Mrs. Sanchez, or the facilities of Aegis Tactical Solutions. Any violation will result in immediate arrest." She struck the gavel once. A single sharp crack. To me, it wasn't wood on wood. It was 16 years of silence breaking. It was the sound of justice. Cold, final, procedural. When the gavel fell, I didn't feel triumph. I felt the bone-deep exhaustion of a long march finally ending. Outside, sunlight spilled across the courthouse steps. A small crowd had gathered. Employees from Aegis, veterans from the local VFW, even a retired master sergeant who had once worked on our assembly line. They didn't cheer. They applauded slowly, respectfully. That quiet wave of sound carried more weight than any shout of victory. Maria embraced me first, her arms strong, her shoulders shaking with relief. Caleb stood a few paces back, his usual lawyer's composure finally cracking into a tired but genuine smile. "It's over," he said. I shook my head. "The battle's over. The war for legacy never ends." That evening, I returned to Uncle Ben's study. The scent of pipe tobacco lingered faintly in the wood. His portrait watched over me from the wall, the same steady gaze that had guided me as a cadet, as an officer, as his heir. On his desk sat the gray lockbox, the insurance file. Not revenge, not spite. Just the truth, documented and waiting. His final weapon passed to me, As I flipped through its contents once more, the lesson crystallized. Legacy isn't money. It isn't stock shares or properties. It's the fortress of honor you leave behind, built from sacrifice and proof. Uncle Ben had built one for me. Now it was my mission to expand it. In the weeks that followed, we established the Colonel Benjamin Thomas Foundation. Maria took the helm as director, Caleb as counsel. Our mission was simple: provide legal and investigative support for service members caught in battles like mine, custody fights, estate disputes, toxic claims where the uniform was used as a weapon against them. We would help them build their own insurance files. 6 months later, I stood in San Diego accepting a leadership award at a defense conference. The room was full of polished uniforms and tailored suits. But when I spoke, I didn't talk about drones or quarterly growth. I talked about loyalty, about protecting your unit, whether that's a platoon in the desert or a team of engineers in a lab. I lifted the glass award only once, dedicating it to the man who had taught me that honor is stronger than blood. Colonel Benjamin Thomas, I said. My mentor, my commander, my real father. The applause was steady and warm. Not spectacle. Respect. Back in D.C., Sunday dinners at Maria's became tradition. Her kitchen was loud with laughter, her grandchildren's voices a reminder of what real family sounds like. The ghosts of Grant and Nayan no longer haunted me. They had become what they always were: strangers, footnotes in a story already finished. One crisp autumn morning, I visited the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. My fingers traced a single name: Miguel R. Sanchez, Maria's father, my uncle's brother-in-arms. I stood in silence, not mourning, but grateful. His bond with Ben had reached forward decades to save me. That was family. The sun broke over the reflecting pool, gilding the Lincoln Memorial in light. And in that moment, I understood the final order my uncle had given me. Family is not blood. It's sacrifice. Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you build. I turned away from the wall with a quiet, steady smile. The war was won. The mission continues. Have you ever seen someone underestimated until they proved everyone wrong? Share it in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. New stories drop every day. And if this one stayed with you, check out our other soldier revenge stories waiting on screen.